Hi, everyone. Welcome to Scare. Thank you for joining us today for our quarterly training series. We are kicking off the next round of our training series called Amplify. I'm Taylor. I'm the Youth Programs Coordinator here at Scare. And today we are diving into the first part in our four-part training series. So today we are going to cover a variety of topics, all under this theme of Money 101. So just some of the basics for finances, and maybe we're going to dive in a little deeper than we have in previous trainings also. If you've been around for a while, you might know that this quarterly training series last year was actually called Elevate. And so in that series, we really focused on taking some skills that we had learned way before in previous trainings and tried to elevate it and take it to the next level. So just as a quick review, we're going to go over some of the topics that we have covered in our previous Elevate series. And if you haven't seen those already, I highly recommend going to our YouTube channel and viewing our previous trainings. They're full of a ton of great info. So in Elevate 1.1, we covered some topics such as growth mindset versus a fixed mindset, how to map your ideal life and what you see and envision for yourself in the future. We went over how to set goals and also the importance of revisiting goals to make sure that we're still either on track or that those are still the goals that we actually want to work towards. Things change. Lastly, in 1.1, we covered how to give constructive feedback in a respectful and straightforward way. In Elevate 1.2, that one is really focused on habits. So we went over some techniques for building habits and the importance of building habits. One of the techniques that we covered was habit stacking and how to pair different things together just to make it more sustainable and more likely to become a habit for you. We also covered some online learning resources, things that are completely free on the internet that have really high quality, great information, everything from the basics that you can learn in school to even just other courses that you can take online for free. Lastly, for 1.2, we covered self-compassion because when we're on a journey of learning and always trying to improve ourselves, it's really important to have compassion for ourselves just every step of the way. For Elevate 1.3, that one was focused on how to support your child's education. So we gave some tips on how to become more involved in your child's school and how to get more involved in their education. We also covered IEPs and 504 plans, so some different plans that you can get through the school just to help set your child up for success if they're struggling. And lastly, we went over advocating for yourself and your children, whether it is in the school setting or in a personal life setting, or just a variety of things, how to advocate for yourself and your children. And that brings us to Elevate 1.4, which we went over topics such as personal presence and what that means. We went over how to build confidence, especially when we don't feel it in the moment. We covered professional purpose and why it's important to feel some type of purpose in everything that you're doing and how to find the purpose, even when it doesn't feel like it's maybe your calling. And we went over effective communication. So as I mentioned, if you haven't seen these trainings already, they're all on our YouTube channel, and I highly recommend that you go back and watch some of it, especially if you're interested in learning more about any of these topics. But today, as I mentioned, we are kicking off Amplify. So the definition of amplify is to make larger, greater, or to increase the strength or amount of. And so this is really part of the theme because we've been doing our quarterly training series for years at this point. First it was momentum, then it moved over to elevate, now we're on to amplify. So the idea is that we've already set a basis for some of these skills, especially when we're trying to become more self-sustaining. So we covered some different career skills in the past, and also just different life skills, whether it's on time management, managing the household, personal improvement. we've built the basis for these skills. Our idea now is to go a little more in depth and amplify them. Right? We want to make our skills larger and greater since we already have the basis for it now. So here's kind of what it means when we're amplifying skills. It can mean just strengthening what you already know, and that doesn't happen magically, right? So we're going to go ahead and practice and improve the skills that we have just to strengthen our skills. Also, just making our skills more versatile and powerful. So maybe we got used to using our skills in one context. Maybe it's with one job or one area of your life. But now if we can start to apply it to new contexts and situations, then these skills are becoming more powerful. We can also amplify the effect of your skills just by using tools to give your skills a bigger reach, especially with the technology that we have and the systems that we can figure out. We can take these skills and just try to change them up in a whole new way. And lastly, amplifying your skills might also mean just shining a spotlight on your abilities. So understanding what skills you have and making them more visible to others, maybe even incorporating it more in your personal or professional life. So today's topics for our Money 101 training, we're going to go over some things like some terms to know. So some of the basics that we might encounter for loans, for banks, and for other financial like purposes. We're also going to go over some money calculators and we'll go ahead and test some of them out online, but it's some great resources for helping out with your budget or to calculate loans or mortgages. There's a lot of resources out there. We're also going to cover how to use Google Sheets to help manage your finances and just like see your financial goals. And then lastly, we'll go over a few more financial resources just to help you on your learning journey. We're only going to cover so many topics today, and I'm not a financial expert. These are things that I've been learning on my own, but there are some really great financial resources out there to help you dive in a little deeper and even just gain more knowledge. I did want to start off by saying it's never too late to learn more about finances. I know this is a topic that can be really vulnerable and stressful for many of us. And a lot of us didn't learn about finances growing up. And we might have had bad examples of finances, or we just don't even know how to deal with finances. So I think there's never a time that's too late to learn. And the more that we learn, then the more that we can set ourselves up for success in the future. And I liked this quote, but the goal isn't more money, the goal is living life on your terms. And so obviously there is an aspect of making more money that can really help, but it's not just about having more money for no reason. When you do gain more control over the money that you have and the money that you make, it just helps you, yeah, be able to live life the way that you want to, have more free time for maybe other things or do things that are important to you. So whenever we talk about finances, it is really important to know your motivation behind it. So we might call it the why, right? It's important to know why you want to reach certain goals, and they're not just like random goals. It'll keep you more inspired to stay on track if you really keep in mind the motivation for it. So your motivation might be to get out of debt. Maybe it's to just be prepared for emergencies or to set your kids up with a college fund. Whatever applies to your situation, just understand why you want to be more motivated to have these financial goals. It's also important to keep some reminders in mind. So it's easy to forget your financial goals, especially when we get to a place where we start making more money. When we have less of the money, of course, we're kind of forced to think about our financial goals or our financial situation. But it's actually harder that when you start making more money, it can be harder to keep those goals in mind and lose track of our financial goals. So try to keep reminders of your goals when you do have wants that come up. So I did italicize the wants because that's a big portion. Um, Obviously, it's different from its needs, but just think of your goals when you do have things that you want that aren't necessary that come up. So I did want to say too, there is a Google survey. It was in the email that was sent with this video. It's also in the YouTube description box below. You are going to need to fill that out to receive your TANF work participation hours. Just so you know, there are going to be prompts along the way for this training that follow along with the survey. So up to you if you wanted to just write down the answers on a piece of paper on your phone for now and then put it into the survey later on, or if you wanted to open up the Google form now and just fill it out along the way, whatever works best for you. But we're going to have a series of questions throughout this training, and I'll put a minute on the clocks to give you guys a little bit of time to answer it. If you ever need more time, feel free to pause the video, just to give yourself a little more time to finish the question. But our first question is going to be, what are some reasons you want to learn more about finance or money management? And a minute is on the clock now. All right, time is up. If you do need more time, feel free to pause the video here until you're done. But I hope you've had enough time to reflect on some of the reasons that you want to learn more about finance and improve these skills. So now we'll jump on to the next section and start diving into some terms to know. So we're going to focus on some common terms that come up, especially relating to bank accounts, loans, income, and credit. And so there might be some that are missing from our list that we're going to go through. Just keep that in mind. But I tried to include a lot of different terms that are really important and that I see often. So first, we're going to focus on some terms relating to the different types of bank accounts. So you might be familiar with a checking account. Checking account is generally for everyday transactions. It's a way to easily access your money using things like debit cards, checks, or ATMs. And we usually use this for paying our bills and just making our routine purchases. However, something that's important to note is that checking accounts really don't earn very much interest. They are meant for money to go in and out of pretty quickly. So they do not earn very much interest in a checking account. Another type of account is a savings account. So you might have a bank and open up a savings account. The purpose of this is to save money for short-term goals or emergencies. They earn some interest that might differ depending on the bank. So it can help your money grow a little bit, but usually there are some type of limits on how many withdrawals you can make, and things like that. But it's meant for money to be stored there for a little bit of time with goals in mind. And the idea is that it's a little bit harder to access all the time. So it's a good place to store your money if you are trying to reach some savings goals. Another account that maybe you've heard of is a money market account. So some banks have this and they often pay higher interest rates than a regular savings account, but they also typically have a higher balance that needs to be in there. And it'll differ by the bank, but savings accounts, you can usually have however much. A money market account, for example, you might need a minimum of $1,000. I'm just making that number up on the spot, but it'll differ depending on the bank that you have. But then they might have a higher interest rate. So if you have money that's sitting in there, you might be earning a little bit more money through the interest. Some other ones out there are a high yield savings account. And only certain banks will have this. It's not going to be every bank, but it's a type of savings account that pays a much higher interest rate than a traditional savings account. So this helps your money to grow a lot faster. And this is something that's good for like medium term to long term financial goals. Because the more money that you have in there and the longer that it sits in there, it will keep building up money because of the interest that these accounts pay. Another one is a certificate of deposit. So this is best for money that you don't really need immediate access to for a certain amount of time. The way it works is that you lock your money into a certificate of deposit, also called a CD, for a certain amount of time in exchange for a fixed interest rate that is typically a lot higher than a regular savings. So a lot of banks will let you put some money into a CD. So for example, if you have $1,000 that you have in a savings account right now, you want to earn a little bit more interest on it. You can go ahead and put it in a CD, and it might be for 3 months or 5 months, but instead of earning 0.3% interest, this CD will be something like 3% interest, which is a lot more than 0.3 or 4% interest, depending on, what the bank's, I guess, like guidelines are for it. So you won't really be able to access that money during that time, though, so that's important to keep in mind if you are looking into a certificate of deposit. And lastly, for bank accounts, we also have annual percentage yield, which you'll see often as APY. That's basically the amount of interest you can expect to earn on a deposit account over a year. So that's where I talk about like a checking account might have 0.3%, that you're earning. So that means that if you have $1,000 in there, no, let's say if you have $100 there, you're earning 30 cents throughout the whole year. Whereas if you have $100 in a high yield savings account, and let's say that's a 4% percentage yield, then you're earning, $4 instead of 30 cents. And of course, it gets scaled depending on like the more money you have, the more money you are able to earn off of interest. Next, we're going to dive into some terms that are all about loans. So you might know what a loan is, but loan is money that is borrowed that is expected to be paid back with interest. So you might borrow a certain amount from the bank, and there's additional money that the bank charges for you borrowing the money. A down payment is something that comes up. It's an initial upfront payment that's made by you, which reduces the total amount of the loan. So if I'm buying a car, let's say the car is $15,000, but let's say I have saved up $3,000. I can use that $3,000 as a down payment, which makes it so I don't have to take out the $15,000 anymore. I can take out $12,000 since I had a $3,000 down payment. So then it's less money that I need to take out in a loan. And so the money that we take out in the loan, like the original amount, is called the principal. So principal is the original amount of money borrowed from a lender, and that does not include the interest or fees that are included with a loan. A loan term is the total amount of time that you have to repay the loan. And depending on what the loan is, it can be something from a matter of months to decades, depending on the type of loan, right? Like a car might be 3 years or 5 years, whereas a house might be, a 30-year loan. Some other terms that you might see come up are APR, which is the annual percentage rate. This is the total cost of borrowing, which includes the interest rate plus other costs like the origination fees, shown with the single annual percentage. So again, kind of similar to the percentages that we see on our savings. It kind of just helps us calculate, well, let's say we have $1,000 that we took out. Well, if we have a 10% annual percentage rate, we're going to be paying an additional 10% of that 1,000. right? So that means we're going to be paying an extra $100 that year, even though we only took out $1,000 of a loan. When it comes to loan, you might also hear the term cosigner. A cosigner is a person who agrees to take legal responsibility for paying the loan if the main borrower defaults. So their income and credit history are also considered in the application. So you might hear these kinds of things when you're, yeah, let's say purchasing a car or anything like that. Maybe your credit score isn't up to par with what the car loans want. In some cases, they might ask for a cosigner. So just is another layer of accountability to make sure that if you don't pay the loan, someone else can also be held responsible for it. Default is the failure to repay a loan according to the terms of the agreement. And then consolidate, or to consolidate loans, it's the process of combining several debts into one. And usually people will do that to lower their payments. So instead of paying one credit card plus a personal loan plus, whatever other loans you might have, a car loan, you might be able to work out something with the company to be able to combine all of those into one. So then you only have one payment. And a lot of the times it'll be a lower payment since you're not paying three different debts throughout the month. It's kind of combined into one. All right, and then some of the last little terms for loans, you might hear the word refinance. So this is the process of taking out a new loan to pay off an existing one. And usually it's to get kind of like a better deal on something like a lower interest rate. Okay, so if I have a loan that has a 15% interest rate, and then I see that there's a possibility of refinancing another loan that has, 10% instead of 15, that means that you're paying less over time. So depending on how much you have, um, some people will refinance it just to get that lower interest rate and pay off the old loan. All right, deferment or forbearance, options that allow a borrower to temporarily pause or reduce loan payments, often used during periods of financial hardship. So for some loans, you might be able to apply for like a deferment or forbearance, depending on situations that come up. If you had any loans out, like student loans, especially during pandemic, during COVID, those were on deferment. So people weren't required to pay them during that deferment period. Lastly, amortization. You might see like amortization schedule. It's basically the schedule of like the repayment plan through regular payments that include the principal and the interest. So you might see it like a whole chart based off of like, if I have a 5-year loan for a car, it'll give me a whole schedule of what it looks like. When I first start paying, maybe my payment is $300 a month. It'll break down that, hey, in the first few months, you're paying $300 a month. $200 of it goes towards the loan, $100 goes towards interest, and it kind of shows you what that looks like throughout the whole repayment plan. All right, let's go ahead and dive into some terms for income. So when you hear the term gross income, that's referring to the amount of money that's earned before deductions and taxes are taken out. So that's like the amount that you're fully getting paid, but not necessarily what your take home is. So your net income, though, that's the profit that you have after the deductions and expenses have been taken out from the gross income. So net income is what a lot of us call like our take home pay. That's the money that we actually see and can like go into our bank accounts. Earned and active income is a term that describes our income that's made directly from working, which is usually the most, I guess, common type of income. But there also is like unearned or passive income. And that's money that's earned with little to no ongoing work. Usually that's through things like investments or rental properties or selling digital products. where it's taking up less of your time overall. It might be some time in the very beginning, but it's usually not you that's doing it, right? If someone has a rental property, maybe other people are taking care of it. So that's passive income because you're still getting the money from the tenants, but you're not really doing too much otherwise. They're just paying it every month. And now some terms for credit. So a credit score is a three-digit number that is often used as a prediction of your credit behavior. So people use it to try to predict like how likely you are to pay a loan back on time, based on information from your credit reports. It's not a perfect system, but many things require it. You might know that even renting an apartment requires it, taking out certain loans, even getting certain credit cards or banks. Um, it will tie in your credit score. Your credit limit is the total amount of credit that you have available to you. So this could include credit cards, store cards, and other lines of credit. So, for example, if I have three credit cards open, maybe each credit card has a $2,000 limit. My credit limit would be combining all of that, right? So 2,000 times three, that means my credit limit would be $6,000 of credit. Your account age is the amount of time that a credit account has been open. And a lot of these things that I'm going over also play a role in our credit score. So our credit limit impacts our credit score a lot of the times. Our account age impacts our credit score. So if we have accounts that have been open for much longer, that shows that is like a plus for a credit score. Also, credit usage or utilization. That's a term to describe how much of your credit limit that you are using. So how I mentioned, like if I had three credit cards, $2,000 each, and total my credit limit would be $6,000. My credit usage, right, if I'm using, let's say, $3,000 of it, right, kind of shows that there's like a 50% utilization. So 50% of my credit is being used. All right, and then lastly, one of the things I want to go over is lifestyle inflation. We've gone through a bulk of the terms. I know that's a lot of information in one sitting, so feel free to go through it as much as you need. But lifestyle inflation is the last one I want to touch on. And it's just the tendency to increase in spending when your income goes up. And a lot of the times it involves goods or services that aren't really necessary. And so being able to get more needs taken care of and occasional treats and wants is good, but too much of that lifestyle inflation can lead to the same financial stress as having less income. And so we kind of see this happening a lot now, especially with how easy it is to purchase things and how normalized it is to like get all these services that aren't really a necessity. And of course, I think it is great to like be able to treat yourself and enjoy these things when you have the money to. But if we start to keep up with it, like let's say if I'm starting to make more money, but then I'm also starting to buy much more, it kind of leads me in that same stress because then I still don't really have any money that I'm able to save if I keep spending more. So it's just the idea of keeping that in mind when income does go up and trying to just live within your means. That brings us to prompt number 2. So go ahead and write down your answer or type it up if you have the Google form open. But our next question is, what's a financial goal you would like to work towards over the next year? And it can be anything like maybe saving a certain amount. Maybe you want to pay something off. Maybe you just want to increase your income. Whatever your financial goal is, there's none that's too small or too big. What's something that you want to work towards over the next year? And I'll go ahead and put a minute on the clock now. right, time is up. Feel free to pause the video if you need a little more time. I hope you had enough time to reflect on like a possible financial goal that you have that is something realistic to work over the next year. All right, next we're going to be diving into finance calculators. I think these are a really cool tool to use online, especially when we're trying to figure out our goals, figure out budgeting, all of that stuff. But there's so many calculators out there, and some of these specific calculators can help plan out financial goals or just plan ahead for the future. So some example calculators might be a savings calculator, like how long it might take to reach your savings goal. And you could use loan calculators, find out how much you're paying overall, how much your payment would be if you take out a certain amount with a certain interest rate. Similar thing with a mortgage calculator, calculating what your mortgage would be and your monthly payments would be. Or even tax calculators to help you get an idea of what you'll be paying for taxes. And so I have a couple websites here. They will also be linked in the YouTube description box. But I'm going to go ahead and lead us through it a little bit. I'm not going to go through every single resource on here, but I just wanted to open it up to familiarize you with it a little bit. But this one's through NerdWallet, and you can already see there's different sections for the calculators, where there's the auto loan calculators, banking calculators, debt calculators, credit card calculators, home and mortgage calculators, insurance, personal finance, personal loans, retirement and investment. Small business, well, there's nothing under small business. So let's look at the next one. Student loan calculators, tax calculators. And it just helps us estimate kind of based off of the information that we're able to provide. So, for example, if you're trying to get into budgeting, this one is a super general rule, a 50-30-20 budget. It's not perfect for everyone. But basically, like when you are in a financially stable place, they recommend a 50-30-20 rule. And what that means is 50% of your income goes towards necessities, 30% goes towards wants, and then 20% goes towards savings or like paying off debts. So this is asking for monthly after-tax income, so our take-home pay. And let's say I'm just going to put in 1,500. Let's say I make 1,500 a month. That means that, okay, when I'm making a budget, I should typically have about 750 towards necessities, 450 towards wants, 300 to pay off debt or put towards my savings. You can put in whatever money it might be. And if you scroll down below, it does give you a little bit more of a breakdown too for what might be considered needs, wants, savings, and debt, right? Where needs might fall under like rent and mortgage, your utility bills, buying groceries, transportation. So maybe it's a bus card, maybe it's paying for gas. And then also your minimum debt payments. So that is still under needs since it is something that you have to pay every month. Some things that might be considered wants would be, vacations, additional shopping, streaming services, gym memberships, entertainment, other things like that that aren't really necessary to survive, but definitely improve quality of life. And lastly, things that fall under savings and debt. Like I said, the minimum debt payments are under needs, but if we're looking at savings and debt, it could also include additional debt payments, right, to help us pay up debt faster. Could be saving for retirement or putting money aside for emergency funds or for a child's future college funds or future life funds. There's also just so many different calculators on here. Like I said, I'm not going to go through every single one, but you can kind of see a general thing. So let's say I want to take out a personal loan, but I also want to figure out how much my monthly payment will be if I do take out this loan. So let's say I'm taking out a loan for $6,000. The interest rate is 12%. and the loan term, so how long I would have to pay off this loan and be part of the loan agreement. Yeah, this right here is five years. So let's say I have 5 years to pay it off. So based off of this information here, I would be paying $133 a month. And then it gives you a breakdown. So I took out $6,000. So this is where we're seeing some of these words that we were going over. It's part of our principal. But how much I'm paying in interest over the course of 5 years, I'm paying over $2,000 interest. So that means over the 5 years of paying this loan, I'm actually paying over a little bit over $8,000 towards this loan. So it could just help you get a better idea of what to expect when you're taking out loans, and see if the monthly payment is realistic and kind of like try to see the trade-offs for taking out the loans. Okay, then real quick, I'll also take us to, I put on another resource on here for SoFi, and it's pretty similar. There's a lot of different calculators on here. They have student loan calculators. So if you have student loans, like how long it'll take to pay off. They have personal finance calculators, and look at, they have an emergency fund calculator. And I think this is pretty neat too, especially when you're creating your financial goals. So it'll give you an idea of how much you need to save to have, let's say, a 3-month emergency fund or a 6-month emergency fund. So let's say I pay, let's say I pay $1,000 towards my portion of rent. And it already has just pre-done kind of numbers in here right now. Yeah, let's see, there's $200 towards insurance. Let's say there's $300 towards food and groceries. $75 towards phone and internet, $100 towards utilities, $150 towards debt, and then any other expenses that you have every month. So if there's something that you do have every month that you want to make sure is incorporated into your emergency fund, you can put that down here. And so based off of this information I put in, I would need $5,775 for a 3-month emergency fund. So that just helps to know, especially these are good things to know, because if for some reason there's a job loss or a health emergency that comes up, we know that, okay, well, to survive and just make the payments, I would need, close to $6,000 to survive for 3 months. Now, if I wanted to try to make sure I'm good for 6 months in case something comes up, it would be a little over $11,000. And they have investment calculators, more debt payoff tools and calculators, um, budgeting and saving, college mortgage, and all this fun stuff. But it's a really cool way to just help gauge where you're at and also just create goals that work for you. Let's see. One that I actually really like. Let's see if there's the savings one. Sinking fund calculator. So sinking fund calculator, sinking funds is just a general term for saving money ahead of time for expected costs. So for example, I know that every year I'm taking out money for things like birthdays or Christmas gifts or routine doctor's checkups, things that I know are going to be happening, but I want to make sure I have the money in advance so it doesn't feel like I'm taking an extra hit out of like my money when the time comes. That's what a sinking fund is. So just a financial goal for expected things to come up. It's not like an emergency fund that's a little more unexpected. Sinking funds are for things that you know are going to come up. So this can help calculate how much to save or how to save, how long it will take. So let's say for my goal, I want to say, I'm not going to even change this. Let's say it's $1,200. Let's say I currently have $150 saved and I want to save this much in a year. Let's say I'm earning a 0.5% interest. That means that over the course of a year, I should put aside about $87 every month to reach this sinking fund goal. And like I said, I'm not going to dive into it too much more. Just great resources to have to help you on your financial journey and kind of calculate how long it'll take to save certain things or what to expect for loans, payments. So this brings us to our next prompt, prompt number 3. Which finance calculators would be helpful for you, and how could they help you? And I'll go ahead and put a minute on the clock. All right, the minute is up. Feel free to pause the video if needed. What do you think? What are some of these finance calculators that might be helpful for you in planning out your financial goals, and how could they help you? Okay, so enough of those calculators. We're going to dive into how to use Google Sheets to help kind of manage our finances and also just visualize our savings goals and our financial goals. So something that I really like about Google Sheets is that it is free to use. If you have a Gmail account, you automatically can use Google Sheets by going through Google Drive. So you would go to Google Drive online, and if you're trying to create the Google Sheet, you can click New with a little plus sign. It's usually in the top left corner, and select Google Sheets. Something that I really like about Google Sheets for people who have tried Excel, Google Sheets is a little more user-friendly than Excel. So I think it's a great resource to try out. This is just an example of what it could look like. I kind of combined everything just into one sheet so we can see it easily. But I mean, using Google Sheets, you can actually track like your monthly spending or monthly budget. You can track your monthly income, with how much you get paid throughout the month. You can track your debt and maybe like how much you've paid off of it, how much is remaining. And even just with savings goals, you can track how much you have saved, how much you have left to save to reach your goals, things like that. So this brings me to what you just saw, right? You can see the different things. It shows this little pie chart. So for the emergency fund on here, the goal is $1,000. Currently, let's say we've saved 250, we have 750 remaining. That tells me, okay, well, I've saved 25% of my goal. I still have 75% left. And what's really cool is that I'll show you guys how to do all this. But what's really cool is that once you have everything set up, you can actually change the amounts in the boxes and it will change the charts for you. So some time passes and now I have saved $400. Oh, well, now we can see the pie chart shift. So now we have 40% saved and only 60% left to reach our goal. And same thing with the debt payoff. If we have a goal to pay off $12,000 of debt, we have currently paid off $5,000. It means we have $7,000 remaining. So let's say our current amount, we've gotten to 6,500. Oops. I'm adding in way too many zeros. We didn't pay that much. We see the pie chart shift, and also we have some formulas in here, so we see the amount change. So now we have over 54% that we have paid off and 45% left that we have to pay. And so what I'll do is actually show you guys how to do some of these things. So first, if we wanted to make some charts and kind of track our goals. So what I like to do is, if, if you're not familiar, please follow along, watch it as many times as you need. I want to merge these cells so it kind of is like a place to put my title for the goal. So by doing that, I'm going to highlight both of those cells. And then there's this box here that has some arrows pointing in. I'm going to merge cells there. We're going to put this as our savings goal. Now within that, I'm going to put goal current amount and then 8. If I want to, like this one, it's kind of going to 2 lines. I want it all to be in the same line, so I can drag this over a little bit. Now, I want to make this look like an official chart. So I'm going to go over here, this box with, it's got 4 squares in it. This is our borders, so we can create a border for our chart. So let's say for our savings, maybe my goal is 2,500. And so what I'm going to do also is have this be in the form of money. So I'm going to highlight this, go to format, and then when you go to format, you go to number. And I like currency rounded because I don't need to see cents on here. It's a little easier for me to track if I just have it rounded. Now we can see all of these are going to be money. Let's say currently I have 675 saved. And so now what's cool is that what I can do is start putting in formulas so it does some of the math for me. So instead of actually subtracting, okay, how much is 2,500 minus 675? We're going to use this formula over here. So to subtract, we're going to put in an equal sign, and then we're going to put the cells on here. So cell minus cell. So basically B2, I'm going to click this one, minus, I'm going to add in that minus sign, minus B3, and enter. And it does the math for us. And what's cool is that anytime that I change this, so now let's say I have, 725, it will do the math and change the remaining amount for me. And so now we'll get into how to make a chart. So now that we have this savings goal and our chart on here, this is going to be step 1. To create a chart, I have a little flow chart over here. So we're going to go to Insert, and then we're going to scroll down to Chart and click on that. So now we've got this big old box here. Next, we're going to go over to the right side where we have this chart editor. Go over to chart type. I want a pie chart. And now it's going to ask for our data range. So this is where I'm going to go ahead and click this box here. And I'm going to highlight the current amount box and the remaining box. And click OK. And so now we can see it already started making the chart for us, right? So we can start to customize it a little more. So we have the base, the basic chart on there. If we go to customize, we can change some of the things too. If I want to make this a little more fun, I'm going to change some of the background colors. Maybe we have it set up like this, our border color. We can go ahead and change our font so it looks a little different. And even make it 3D if we want. Or maximize so the chart is a little bigger. We can change up this pie chart a little bit. So if I want a donut hole in it, Now it's just a circle. And let's see. Let's change up our slices because that blue is hard to see. So slice number 1 and slice number 2. I like to associate it with colors that make sense for me. So for me, red always means like what's left. So for example, green could be like, green is good to me. So green is maybe what I've already paid. Red is what I am trying to still put into it. So then we can see. Yeah, I'm just playing around with a little bit. You guys feel free to play around with it. But we can now have our basic chart on here. So we have a visual of where we're at with our savings goals and how much is left to reach those goals fully. So you can do it with different things. So it might be how much money you want to save. Maybe it's how much you have left on your car loan. Maybe how much you have left for a certain debt payoff. And you can kind of do the same thing. The most important part is that you want the total amount or our goal amount. We want the current amount that you've either paid or put into your savings, and then what is left to reach that goal. And then you would be good. All right, next we're going to go over how to make some of the charts for just calculating monthly income and then also monthly spending or budgeting. So I'm going to start off a similar way. I'm going to merge those two cells there. And it might be different depending on how often you get paid every month. Maybe you get paid twice a month. Maybe you get paid, just kind of randomly throughout the month. Right? We can just have it labeled however it makes sense to you. One, you want monthly income. Paycheck two, paycheck three. I'm also going to make this bigger. So I'm just going to select all these because I want the font to be size 12. It's a little easier to see. And then lastly, I also want to put the total. So let's say that we have paycheck number 1, which is we get paid and it's at $861. Paycheck number 2 is 953. Paycheck number 3 is 795. And so I'm going to do a similar thing to the last one where I'm going to highlight these cells, go to format, number, and go to currency rounded down here. And so now it's actually calculating as money. And now if I want to add up all of these here, we have our formula over here. So what we're going to do is start off with an equal sign. And it's already giving us a suggestion, but I'm going to type it in still. So I'm going to type in sum, do 1 parentheses, and I'm going to select and highlight those 3 boxes since I want all of those to be added up together. I'm going to put the end parentheses and press enter. And so now we have our total amount here. And so now we have kind of a general visual of how much we would make throughout the month if these were what our paychecks look like. And now we can take that and we're going to go ahead and do a monthly spending now. So I'm going to merge the cells to monthly spending and then put in the categories that make sense to you. So category amount. So some common ones could be rent, utilities, credit card, insurance, gas, groceries. You can budget for eating out, budget for shopping, budget for savings. whatever the category is that makes sense to you. And then we do total. And on this one, I'm actually going to put remaining because what I'm going to do is see how much I have for my budget here or my spending here. And I'm going to subtract it from our monthly income to see what's left over and see what we want to do with that money. So I'm going to go ahead and put a border on it. I personally like to have things in bold to see that. Let's say for rent, we've got $1,200 a month. Let's say we pay $95 a month in utilities. We pay $35 a month towards our credit card. We spend $250 towards insurance, spend about $145 on gas, maybe groceries is $375. Eating out is $134 for the month. Maybe we put aside an extra $80 for shopping and $90 for savings. And so first, I'm going to highlight all of these, go to Format, Number, Currency Rounded. And then now we're going to use some of those formulas again. So we want the total here. So I'm going to do equal sign, some parentheses. And I'm going to select everything in that row and parentheses and enter. So, okay, that tells us 2,404 based off of everything that we have in there. And now if I want to do a formula for remaining, I can go ahead and do equal sign. I'm going to select our total from our monthly income, subtract, so do our minus sign, and I'm going to select our total down here, press enter. So if this is my budget for the month, I actually have $205 still remaining. So maybe if that's the case, I think, well, I'm going to go ahead and put a little more towards my savings, right? So maybe we do $140 towards savings. And now we see the remaining amount go down. Now it's down to $155. So maybe I want to now pay off a little more of my credit card. So let's go ahead and do $90 there. Okay, well, I still have $100 left remaining, and it's the holiday time. I'm going to be spending a little more on groceries. So this is now, I'm going to do $475. And now we see that there's zero remaining. And this is an example of maybe like a budget. You can also do this to track your spending throughout the month, and just put down whatever it is you're spending on the left side and then the amounts on the right, just to get a better idea of what your spending looks like. But that is basically how to use Google Sheets to do things like creating charts for your goals, doing charts for your income and spending. And even here, you can also make a chart if you really wanted to for your monthly income versus how much you're spending throughout the month, if you do like visuals. Okay. So it's a lot of info all at once. Let's go ahead and look at the next prompt. So now we're on to prompt number 4. How could tracking your finances help you reach your goals? So now's a good time to pull up the Google form and fill out the survey, or just write it down on the side for now. But I'm going to go ahead and put 1 minute on the clock. And time has started. All right, time is up. Pause the video if needed. But I hope you were able to reflect a little bit on how tracking your finances, whether it's financial goals, monthly income, or monthly spending, just figuring out how tracking that stuff can help you reach your goals. All right, on to kind of like our last section for today's workshop, maybe on just some financial resources that are out there. As I mentioned, I'm not an expert in finances. I'm always learning, and I want to take any of that knowledge that I learn and try to share it also. But there are some really great resources that go way more in depth for financial literacy. One of them is Khan Academy, and Khan Academy has a ton of learning resources. I think we've actually covered it in previous trainings for other reasons. But they also now have a financial literacy course and a personal finance course. And it's completely free. You do not have to pay anything to use Khan Academy. If anything, you just can make an account for free so it saves your progress. But if you go to some of these courses, they'll have lessons on financial topics along with the activities to make sure that the material is understood. And so here's an example of what the Financial Literacy Khan Academy has. So I went to the financial literacy course and it gives a breakdown of the units. So you can kind of see the overall topics that it's covering, everything from budgeting and saving, consumer credit, financial goals, loan and debt, so on. And then this is a little screenshot of also what it looks like because it breaks down each of the units for you to tell you what's in that. And so it'll have exercises and information for each of these topics as well. So like budgeting and saving, okay, we can see that it goes over budgeting, goes over reducing expenses and saving money. Consumer credit goes over credit score, credit cards, payment methods, things like that. So it's a great resource to just learn so much more about finances and money because, as I mentioned, this is such a vulnerable topic for people. And many of us have not learned this stuff in school or from our parents or people around us. So I'm really glad that there's resources out here to be able to learn it on our own now. And again, I'll have these websites and everything linked for you guys in the description box below. But here's another one. It's the Consumer Finance website. And here's a little screenshot of some of the things that they have. But they have some other tools that have different guides to go over these topics. So they have guides for buying a house, for disasters and emergencies, for filing your taxes, for getting an auto loan, and even just all of these, planning for retirement, unexpected job loss. They even have a little section where you can find some answers to different questions about common topics. So maybe you have some questions about, fraud and scams, money transfers, debt collection, anything. It's a really great resource out there, and they have a ton of things for you to learn from. They just have a lot of different resources and guides for, as you can see, a lot of different financial topics. And on that note, again, especially with something like finance, please do not compare yourself to others. I recently saw this quote and I really loved it because, especially in the day of social media, we see other people and think everyone else is successful and we're struggling or we're having a really hard time with the things that we're going through and everyone else is happy, whatever it might be. But I like this quote that I saw here. Whenever you see me somewhere succeeding in one area of my life, that almost certainly means that I am failing in another area of my life. Right. So that's just something to keep in mind whenever we see someone's successes, we don't see the whole story. There's other things that we don't see that they're going through, just as we ourselves have things to celebrate and things that we're going through at the same time. And again, a last little reminder, it's never too late to learn more about finances and just practice new ways to plan out your finances. Hopefully some of the things in this training were helpful for you. Um, the spreadsheets might work for some people and might not work for others. It's all about just trying things out and figuring out what works best for you. So in the midst of all this, give yourself grace. We are all just trying to make the best decisions that we can within our circumstances. And thank you for joining our Amplify training. The next one will be in 3 months since it is a quarterly training. But just a reminder too to please fill out the survey to receive work participation hours with your tribal TANF caseworker's approval. Any links that I had put in like throughout this training, they will also be in the YouTube description box below, along with the survey link. So go ahead and look down there for more information. But thank you again for joining, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.